coffee actually looks like. And that is, I think, one of the most real things about being a business owner is like small coffee. Really? That's all you drink? Okay, cool. That's great. Me, I need the 12 to 20 ounce. But I am joined today by Helen. Helen, welcome to Big Questions Medium Coffee. This is the first time we met. We found out we're practically family, living across the same country together as of 10 minutes ago. Helen, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and why you're here in the world?
Thank you, Marissa. It is a big question. I'll handle it. I'm not daunted. I love that we're here. I have really enjoyed our pre-recording chat. My name is Helen Tremethick. I like to say a lot of people have trouble with my last name, and so I like to say it's like terrific and tremendous had a baby. So yeah, Tremethick. Helen Tremethick. I am a thought partner and co-conspirator for entrepreneurs who are struggling to create their businesses in a way that feels really aligned with who they are. And so that looks like a lot of things. It looks like I'm not really sure how to talk about what I do, or I used to do that, but I changed and now I don't really know how to position it. It looks like I have people who really enjoy my work, but my offers aren't really landing. And so a lot of the work that I do is through my Love Badassery Motorcycle Club, which is a membership group that I have, and through one-on-one coaching.
So tell me about the motorcycle club name brand. Where does that come from?
You know, it's funny. So Love and Badassery is essentially my umbrella methodology, and we can talk about that later. But I was sitting with my business coach one day. We were talking about starting a membership. What does that look like? I don't even really know. And the thing about being an entrepreneur is that a lot of the times we are told that we need to do like X, Y, and Z. Hello, Canadians. X, Y, and Z in exactly this order, in exactly this way, and equals success.
Right.
Equals success. Just do the thing and then that's that. But there are a lot of us out there who don't fit that mold, who feel like we're square pegs, or who feel like there's a culture in marketing that we don't agree with. There's a lot, and we can go down that rabbit hole too. But the idea of calling it just another membership didn't sit well for me, because the work that I do, everything I do is about breaking the templates. It's about changing things up. It's about doing what feels aligned most for you. So we actually were talking, my business coach and I, about how it's a little bit like a motorcycle club, where there's a place that you can hang out. There's a place where you can get support. You have a community there. And then the rest of the time, you are off on your own adventure.
Sure.
So that's how it started. And then I couldn't find the word that I wanted. So because we already had it. So it became the Love and Badassery Motorcycle Club. Members get patches in the mail sent to them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like a skull and crossbones, but they're actually pen and a marker. It's like
nice.
It's all very cute and well branded, and I love it. I love it.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, probably to no surprise to you, I created my brand is called Create the Rules. So I probably agree with you on a lot of these kind of like, you know, theologies on like how should we be, why would we want to do these cookie cutter methods? Sure, sometimes they work. And here's where, and I know we're probably going to sneak into the kind of colonial capitalism side of conversation, but here's my challenge is that, yeah, they do work, but do you feel good after? Like, and I mean, some people will be like, yeah, I got money in my bank. But you also use a lot of like really icky persuasiveness and maybe passive aggressive and maybe that fear of missing out, or that, you know, that kind of language where it's like, oh, here's one that always bugs me. If you want to do well in your business, you need to get a coach, which I think is hilarious because I'm a coach and I don't believe that. And I'll be like, why? I mean, use a coach if you want to, but like, what? I hear a lot where it's like, you know, you should just get a coach. And if you don't have a coach, you know, like, are you really doing business? And all those kind of like, and yeah, it works. But I don't feel good about it. I would never use that in my marketing. And I have had people who are like, you should. I'm like, please don't shit all over me. So I like that you're kind of coming at this in some different methods. Now, I want to talk about this. You came up with a new title because you're like, and I was like, give me a title. I need to write something here. I kind of forced you into that. I'm sorry. didn't mean to like, but then you're like, co-conspirator. Now I like that because I think this is also an interesting way to look at businesses and especially hiring support in our businesses is that we either look at it from the model where I'm the boss and I've hired you to work in my business. And that's like, you hire your social media people, your frontline, whatever, like all those people that are kind of doing these tasks that maybe you don't want to do. Then there's the relationship between you and maybe a business coach or a mentor. And that's a whole other power, weird power imbalance, balance, whatever. But I like this co-conspirator because it's actually like we're working on this together and we're on an equal playing field. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. That I have been dabbling with the word coach in this way you were saying about using tactics that don't really sit well.
Yeah.
And, even though I'm out here saying like, create the rules, right? That you break the system, find what works for you. Even though I still get caught up in the swell of it and the SEO of it too, because people aren't looking for business co-conspirators out there, I'll tell you. So there's the SEO of it as well. And I felt when I started my business, I was a copywriter, and as years went on, I moved into coaching. And so I felt like coaching is correct, but it still always felt a bit sticky. It felt a bit too hierarchical.
Mm-hmm.
And also it felt really open-ended. And I am all about action steps, small, imperfect, experimental action steps. And I'm not going to ask open-ended questions so that you can like find your way to the deepest spot and pay my mortgage for the next year and a half. What we're trying to do is get you like unblocked, figure it out, find it. And don't get me wrong, bring your emotions. Your emotions are welcome here because that's all part and parcel of it. And anybody who thinks that you can separate your emotions from the rest of it is like, subscribes to capitalism in a way that I do not.
Yeah.
So it's more about like bringing your whole self and finding out what those next steps are. And that feels much less hierarchical, much less open-ended. And so co-conspirator felt right. So I was using thought partner and business coach, and and recently I've been using thought partner and co-conspirator. And when you said you forced my hand into it, you did a little bit, because this is the first interview where I've used that as my title, as opposed to hello.
You brought up an interesting thing about search engine optimization. Now, one thing that I was going to say, I was going to tell you at the end, but I'll just talk about this. The reason why I started this is because I wanted to give business owners an opportunity to have search engine optimization in a different manner. So after this, we then take this video, we're going to edit it a little bit. We're going to put in some pop-up video. I know you're from Canada, so you know pop-up video, some additional stuff in here to help people have a really full experience with the video. It gets put on Pinterest. It gets put on, our blog. It gets put on, and we use your keywords. So here's an opportunity. You're like, I actually really want co-conspirator to be a thing. We can do that. We can be a partner with you in that all of our content that points to you has that co-conspirator thing. And then what happens is you're going to be on another podcast or in a conference, or maybe you're going to write a book, and somebody's going to see this co-conspirator and be like, who's that person that was like co-conspirator in your business? And then they're going to go to Google and they're going to go co-conspirator, and they're going to see all of these things where we have now referenced you. So it's not like I've heard copywriters where they're like, you need to use the words that people are searching for. Yes. And what else can you do that actually allows you to define your brand? Because some of these terms that we are now commonplace were not commonplace a couple of years ago. They've become commonplace because we repeated them over and over again to allow that messaging to sink in.
That's exactly it. I used to be a copywriter. I switched from that to brand voice strategist. This is before brand voice strategy was even really a thing. I'm not saying I invented it. I didn't, but brand voice strategy wasn't. I was really nervous about using it in my copy because there was nothing on Google about brand voice strategy. and then from there went into coaching. I love the word co-conspirator. I was talking with Meg Casebolt, who's a friend of mine, and I think she's been here and had a chat with you as well. And we were talking about the search term of badass entrepreneur, because I use that a lot as well, as talking about badass entrepreneurs and those who want to be. I don't define the word badass as necessarily dark sunglasses, leather jacket, like smoking cigarettes out the back of high school. I don't necessarily define it that way, but I define it more like in a world where the society expects you to toe the line, to perform to the status quo, the most badass you can be is who you are. And if you lean into that, like that is what gets you the traction that you need for your business. So it's all about like coming home to yourself and bringing that out. So Meg and I were talking about the search term badass entrepreneur and how to rank for that, even though it's not necessarily something that people are looking for, right?
Yeah, and that becomes this kind of layered marketing plan, which I will talk forever. Like people want like, oh, this is my marketing plan, and I'm just going to dominate this one platform. I'm like, cool, but cool. What if it disappears? So I'm like that, I'm like that. How about you start dabbling in some other things and layer it, and and like part of it is when you know your key message. Like you said, you've leaned into it. You're like, this is who I am. And you start living that key message. It becomes really easy actually to do a layered marketing plan, because you're literally, I got this. I know how I can adapt it. I can see how there's different opportunities for me. When you don't have that key message, when you don't have that identity, that's when there's the struggle there. And it's interesting. So, because I have a friend who just recently kind of rebranded me a bit. I do call myself a business partner when I'm working with coaches, or when I'm coaching or doing that kind of business mentorship idea curation. But I say a business partner and not a coach either, because I do a whole whack of stuff. I have like a whole like plethora of background that comes into that play, which I think most of us do at this point in at least in my age group. But she called me a chief nourishment officer. And it's really interesting because it's so weird, right? You're like, I'm a CNO. But whenever I use it, it's such a big, like visceral response from people, because we're not nourishing ourselves as business owners. And I do talk about nourishing ourselves as business owners, so that it's not going to be a term that is, people are going to be like, who's that chief nourishment officer? And I'm not there yet. But the more I talk about it, the more I reinforce that I had to nourish myself. I had to go, whoa, in my business and be like, I am not building a business that nourishes me. Start talking about that. That chief nourishment officer will come.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the other piece of that is that what you were saying with the layers, right? So it's not like you're throwing everything out and focusing only on chief nourishment officer, which I love, by the way. But
shout out to Sonia McCord for doing that, because I did not come up with it.
Yeah. So, it's not just about like throwing it all out and focusing only on that. It's about layering it. And you said, when you know who you are, then it becomes easier to talk about it. And that is exactly what I've been saying that for a decade, that when you know who you are, it's easier to talk about what you do. But not only that, not only is it easier to talk about, but it's easier to figure out what your next offer is. It's easier to like connect with your clients. It's easier to do a meet and greet at, the conference, even though you're like introverted AF. And because you've got something to come back to, that kind of touchstone piece of like, oh, I know this. And so that becomes kind of your hub for everything that you do in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this is Big Questions Medium Coffee. I also have the little podcast of Big Questions. I have a product called the Little Box of Big Questions. I have, there's all these like layers in there, but it like when people say, what do you do? I'm like, I either say I ask big questions, or I help businesses really create nourishment and ease and profit in their business, which I also love. And then as you start talking about it, and we touched on this a bit, I am definitely post-colonial capitalist. I am like, we need to move on. We need to have a new economy. We need to stop exploiting people. I will say that till my face turns blue from all of the words I'm expelling about it. But I love that like people will know me for those different aspects too, right? So they're like, wait, she has a thing called profit plan, but she's also talking about ending capitalism. Like, how does that work? And that becomes a story in itself.
And it also makes you really human as well. And it makes you a richer personality on the internet. And that sounds a little bit like, I don't know, sleazy maybe, but the way that we are interacting these days as like humans, as a human species, we're still brand new to the internet. We're still figuring out how to make connections on the internet.
Mm.
And some of my best friends I have never met in real life, like thanks to borders and
Yeah.
all sorts of time zones.
Yeah.
But there's still this piece of like trying to figure out who people really are
Really
on
are.
the internet, especially when we have a gap that needs to be filled in us, in our businesses, and we're looking for support or solutions for those, and therefore are going to give some money to that. Like, it's hard to figure out who to trust, how to know for sure. And so the more of our like whole selves we can share, kind of the better. And I don't mean, again, like airing all of our dirty laundry. We don't need to necessarily be messy about it, but to say, actually, I believe that people can make a profit while not exploiting people, while saying that, you know, capitalism doesn't make sense in the way that the system is structured, that those two things can be true at the same time. I know that because that's who I am too. And so immediately, you and I know that we have things that we can talk about. We know that we are kin in particular ways. We know that we have shared values, and that creates that trust factor, even though you live a couple of time zones away from me.
Yeah, and alternately, it also allows other people who don't agree with that to know that we are not kin, and that it might be really frustrating to talk to us. And I think that's one of the best. It's the best thing we can do for our customers and clients is to help them have a really good hell yes or a hell no to our product. And this is where I've seen this trend too, is like how many times, like how much clickbait is out there is like close more leads, get more prospects, like all these like really gross like language where, you know, where we just look at people as numbers on our spreadsheet as opposed to actually like people living. I heard a commentary yesterday, I think it was like in the US, the people in the US are seen as consumers, not producers. And Canada has some like similar stuff that we're going there too, where things are being produced elsewhere. I run a huge maker network, so obviously I'm trying my best to bring us back into more of the producing side of things. I have a bit of a bias there, but I thought it was really interesting where we reduce people to just being consumers, right? We look at how much spending is happening in a household. We're looking at how much, you know, people are buying or consuming or you know, buying new houses, all these kind of things, these factors. And so we look at that language in marketing where it's like close more leads, get more prospects, close more sales, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, actually, no, I want people to be able to say no to my product just as well as the hell yes.
Absolutely. I love this. Okay, so two things. First, I have on the homepage of my website that it says convincing people to say, oh, good gracious, yes, since 2010. 2011. I love that you're talking about that. Oh, hell yes. You know, that yes, it needs to feel good. And there's going to be tons of things in our businesses that don't feel good. And that is just the way of running business. But when we're talking about creating connection, that's what we're talking about here. When I want to talk about sales, I want to talk about connection. I want to talk about trust. I want to talk about integrity. I want to talk about shared values. And the second piece of that, outside of the oh good gracious yes, is that when I was teaching copywriting, people would ask me how to change the bounce rate. So how to lower the bounce rate so that people would stay on your website longer. And we can talk about how to captivate people into staying on your website, but it's only going to be good for the right people. So I used to say, don't be afraid of the back button. Don't be afraid of that bounce rate, because you want your bounce rate to be healthy enough that the right people are staying, but the wrong people are leaving and going elsewhere and finding a service provider that will be really good for them. Bye.
Yeah. And I would say, look at where they're coming from to actually improve that. It's not the copy on your website. The copy on your website's doing its job if they're not seeing what what they came for. what brought them there, right? And that's where we can look at that layered marketing as well, because if you're out there saying something different, or you've got links or articles that are not related and they're coming back to your site, well, yeah, then you're doing a lot of effort to cultivate an audience that you don't even want to work with. And that's where you can spend a lot of time and money and effort doing that. And it's really like a big sabotage, but it's really easy to fix too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that coming back to who you are, coming back to that, like knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in. Pardon, what you stand for was ableist, and I'd like to redact. So what you believe in and what values you have, that is so key in knowing how to position yourself in your marketing across the board, how to talk to people, what to say on social media, who to connect with, so that they're sharing those backlinks. It's all really, really key.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to point something out, and not to embarrass you or anything, but I said something that's ableist. I want to redact it. I have to give you that takes a lot to do that. And I think that's also knowing who you are, because we do say things all the time. There's terms of phrases, there's things that are so comfortable and just kind of built in that sometimes we say things and we put it out there and we're like, shit, that's not what I want to be about. Being able, knowing yourself is also being able to be like, whoops, that's not great. That's not who I am. I don't want to do that. And then you go, you move on. There's this chance, where we see in marketing where people make these big mistakes too, or they err. They're going to err. We're all still learning. We're all still trying to figure out how to, like you said, build communication, build connection, build community. We're all just trying to figure that out. We're on this probably an endless ongoing transformation of learning how to be in community. When a business does know what they're doing and knows who they are and what they are, they're able to say, I just said, take a stand, but gosh, we can really be really affirmative and actionable when we're sitting as well. We're like, that's a reality, right? And being able to say that and actually acknowledge that you might have missed an audience that is impacted by your words. So I just want to give you some kudos, because I think the way you did that was really great. And anybody else is wondering out there how to catch yourself and be like, gosh, that wasn't great. That was a good example of it.
Hey, thank you. We're all going to screw up. We are all humans. And especially if we are putting ourselves out there, achieving the success that we say that we want, then we're going to get more views, and people are going to, and that means that we might screw up. We will screw up. Inevitably, we will screw up, every single one of us. And so the question isn't how to avoid that. The question is how to apologize, how to make appropriate amends if necessary, and then how to learn deeper and move forward. And there are so many, I am certainly not an expert on DEI or any of this. But just a human trying. And I think,
and I can tell who you are. It's interesting because we saw, you know who Rachel Hollis is?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and I remember. Yeah.
Okay, so she had a little thing. Some would say quite big, but she builds a brand on being this relatable person, and then all of a sudden she's like, I'm not here to be relatable. And I was like, ma'am, you do not know your message. That's all. I was looking at it from a marketing lens. I was like, you are not comfortable with who you are, and you do not know who you are, and you just leaned in to, instead of being like, oh shoot, I am the product of a capitalist society that basically puts people off to the side. The people who are helping us, the people who are supporting us, the people who are making sure that we can be great, we look at them as others. And it's that's all it took. And I thought it was really interesting to watch. I'm like, wow, not only did you not know your brand, but then you leaned into something maybe that's her true self, whatever. I don't really know her, but I was like, there's a person who doesn't know their marketing message. I have a PR background, so I always go, that person needs a PR person.
100%. That's exactly it. That, she had a really great opportunity, and this goes for all of us. So we're using her as an example at the moment, and not to slam at all, but to say that there was a really great opportunity there to pause, ask for help, because there are experts out there who would be willing, and there were a lot of people who were providing a lot of free emotional labor for a very long time. So like shout out and kudos to those people who just took that time and energy, because it was a lot of both. But there were people who were right there.
Because they care.
Exactly.
Yep.
And there were people right there who she could have hired. And if I'm ever to make a mistake that has such impact, then like such negative
Yeah.
impact, then that's the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say like, hold tight,
Yeah.
like, let me, let me gather so that I
Yeah.
can respond in a way that, that shows my integrity, because, like the screw ups are inevitable. It's just really how we deal with them.
Yeah, and some things like are quick, like you're like, oh, I shouldn't. That word's kind of ableist, so like I'm just gonna like redact it, and we're gonna go like whatever that we life moves on. But like other times you're like, shoot, this is like the beginning of something I need to actually work through, because obviously there is a lot of internal conversations happening, a lot of internal beliefs. I need to go do some education, and I need to go and that's knowing who you are, though, right? Like that's being strong and being like, okay, I got this wrong.
Yeah.
I got to go figure it out. Here's the time it's probably going to take me, but I'll update you and let you know if it's working, if it's not working, right? Like that to me is like where you start to build that community. And I think it's an interesting switch as we move into this kind of post-colonial capitalist environment that we're in, where we're not protecting the power. We're not protecting that hierarchy of where this person's up here as a celebrity entrepreneur and this person's down here as a learner or a consumer of their product. When we start to bring down that hierarchy, I think we're going to start to see this really like a change in business, because the people that are there to help us be great, we're there to help them be great. So it's like, how do you start to build these like community, these connections, this teamwork, this co-conspirator from your employees, your team members, your business partners, the community that you serve, the community that you live in and that you get to build a business on. Those are powerful questions to me.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned something about, we're just trying to be good humans in community. And this is one of our jobs. This is one of our jobs as entrepreneurs. This is one of our jobs as people, is to just keep trying to be better humans in community, because that's the stuff that lasts, regardless of whether the empire falls or I'm not going to say or, regardless of when the empire falls, that's the nature of empires. All empires fall. And so regardless of when the empire falls, it's like we are going to need our communities, and we are going to need to be good humans within them. So as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people who are trying to be profitable with integrity, then we owe it to ourselves as well as our people to keep trying, to keep like coming back, learning more, and then going from there, not being so hierarchical, because, this is something that I say with my clients all the time. Like, you are your expert in your business. I am not the expert in your business. You are the expert.
Mm-hmm.
I am here to help shine lights in corners that you haven't been looking at. I'm here to help you like clean up and dust and organize. I'm helping you see where there are doors and opportunities that you didn't see before. But like, if you say, no, this is what works, that is like, let's go there then, right?
Yeah.
You're the expert. Yeah. And that's not hierarchical at all.
No, it isn't. It really is like this really nice connection. I think we've gotten to this point where we're starting to look and say, okay, I used to just look at people who had this power. So like we look at like, the doctors, the police officers, the government officials, the teachers, these people that we said, follow your elders. They've got it. There's some truth in there. We've missed a lot of elders that have a lot of truth that I know in Canada, we're starting to come back to and be like, okay, there's a whole elders that we have missed completely and that we need to come back to and learn how to be in this land and be, be good stewards of this land and be good stewards of community. But there's also, like you said, there's that time where you kind of look and you go, the things that you say are true for you are not necessarily true for me. And I need to be able to create a business and a life that supports that. How do we do this? And this is something I think about all the time because, again, my brand is create the rules. I'm encouraging people to build businesses that work for them. But I also want them to see how the choices they make impact the communities they serve.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that? Because you're in that community too. You're saying, okay, you're gonna be out riding on the highway on that motorcycle, building your business, but then you come back in and here's that community. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I look at it with the sense that of being, not to be redundant, but of being a good human, of being a good, kind person. And I mean kind and good and not nice, because nice is different. Like a good person, we talk about this with our kid all the time. My kid is currently in grade 4 as of a couple of days ago. And we talk about, the difference between being nice and being good, and quite readily, because if you are in the schoolyard and you see somebody hurting somebody else, the good thing to do would be to speak up and, maybe get in there to do something. The nice thing to do might be to like help the person up, but not necessarily step into the conflict. And so I would like to continue that metaphor and extend it out to running businesses, not necessarily with bullies, but with like codes of behavior. It's our job as humans to take care of ourselves and each other. And each other cannot be forgotten, that we must live in a community because of the way society is built, that we are, no matter how autonomous we may want to be, as soon as we step outside of our houses, we are no longer, we are part of the village, we are part of the greater community. And so our businesses need to kind of be created as such as well. We need to put structures in place that are kind and respectful and have, a decent code of behavior. So I have some really strong values around being respectful, around equity, and that means that I don't accept any hateful behavior in my business, in my communities, or or by extension in my clients' communities. And so that's the way that I work with it. And to come back to being a good human.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I can be a bit snarky, and I will say that, but it's usually like after a person has been snarky to me. And one thing it's been interesting in my business journey over the last like year or so is that people will say, I'll have like an opinion. So for example, I might say, yeah, I'm really interested in like the whole idea about land back in Canada, particularly, but Turtle Island would be amazing. But Canada is where I live and where I can mostly influence through my voting and through my, looking for leaders that are also interested in that. And I had someone who, like a couple weeks ago said something like, as a business coach, so they went on my Facebook profile. I was in a comment section, and they're like, as a business coach, I find it really strange that you would want your business taken away from you because you no longer own the land. I'm like, well, let's be real. I don't really own any land here, even though I might have bought a house. At any given time, my government could say, we're building a highway through here and you no longer live here. I mean, like let's just be real. I don't have any control over that. But I said, although I said, really, I benefit so much from this land. Why would I want to exploit it to the point where it's no longer bountiful for me to actually build a business? And why would I want to work with businesses who are looking to exploit it further so then I don't have a bountiful land? Like, this isn't a renewable resource we're looking at right now. We're actually depleting it. And it was really interesting because he kept saying, like, as a business coach, and I was like, as a human being on this planet. And I could tell like I was getting a little snarky. And so it's interesting because I struggle with my responses back. And this is not a client, but it can be where there's such a like a point where people are used to being in power, being in control, and other people just saying, yeah, you're right. And now you have this pushback and people are like, you're not being nice. I'm like, I'm not being nice. I'm giving my opinion. Like, you asked for my opinion, I gave you my opinion, and now you say I'm not nice. Like, it's an interesting thing for me. And also I should say I'm neurodivergent. So half the time I don't understand what people are if they're insulting me, or I'm like, are you okay? Like, I don't understand. And until like someone points out like that person's trying to make fun of you, or that person's trying to degrade you. And I'm like, why? Like, what's the so I should say, like, I get kind of far into conversation sometimes with it before somebody points out to me that like they're trying to be mean. But like, how do you look at that from like a business? How do you maneuver it? How do you work in it? How do you create these kind of like avenues of communication when people might be telling you this is how you should be nice, or this is what they think is respectful, or this is what they think is good?
Right.
That was a really story for that question, but
no, I love that. So I would like to come at that question a kind of sideways, if you like. That I live on a permaculture farm and education center. My partner is a permaculture teacher, and we sometimes host classes here. Sometimes he travels to go and teach permaculture classes. And we talk a lot about regenerative systems, because permaculture design, it uses a lot of like, it re-indigenizes our thinking in a lot of ways, where we look at systems as a whole. So you can bring permaculture into your business as well. There are going to be aspects, factors that come into your business that are not helpful, not beneficial. And then you're given the opportunity to like figure out how you're going to deal with them. Not everybody is going to like you.
no.
Fine, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to like you. And I say that as a really sensitive, thin-skinned person who holds on to things. And I'm very, like, I am an emotional person. I'm not saying, oh, just let it go. What I'm saying is that there are going to be people who don't like you. And the bigger that you get, the more success that you have, the more people who see you. There are going to be people who say, no, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe you are to them. And that's still okay if it's working for you, if you're in integrity with yourself, if you're taking care of yourself and your community. Because remember, not just yourself, but and your community. If you're creating those regenerative systems so that you're leaving the land better than when you arrived, you're leaving the business better and better than, and the community, like this, just the ripple effects of that are just so powerful. There will always be people who are like, well, I could have done that like faster and better, and like,
then do it. Then go do it.
Yeah,
go,
exactly.
Go for it.
So
I love that you said permaculture though, because somebody explained to me before I knew what permaculture was, and someone was like, I'm like, what's permaculture? And he's like, the easiest way I can describe it is like putting plants together, like one doesn't take from the other. As each plant is growing and flourishing, they give to the other plants around them, and it doesn't allow, like, you don't have to have too much outside forces to make sure that everybody else thrives. And so I've not ever forgotten that, because I think about my garden, but I love how you brought this in for business, because that's actually a really great, that's what I see business being, is that like as everybody rises, it doesn't take away from anyone else. It actually allows them to thrive too. And we don't have to add in a whole bunch of extra, additives and fertilizer and water, all this kind of stuff, because everybody's taking care of each other.
Exactly. And that is how profit works without exploiting people, right? That is how you can have that both and. Because once you start factoring in things like, again, with the metaphor of your garden, once you start factoring in things like, oh, well, the wind comes in this way, and because I'm in Alberta, there are Chinooks that come in at this time of year, but colder winds that come in at that time of year, or there's salt that comes along the road at this point, then you know what factors you're dealing with. If I am showing up on Instagram lives every day, I know that I'm going to get some factors of like, there's going to be people who are coming in that particular way. That is a factor that I need to consider. And if I want that, then that's something that I can do more of to build that. And if I don't want that, if I don't want that type of attention, then I know that I need to figure out a strategy to make it work in other ways. So it's not just like one plant, but a system as a whole. And so we can look at our business that way. We can look at our marketing that way. We can look at our communities that way. We can look at our bodies that way as well. We can look at our relationships that way, and we can look at our gardens that way.
Cool. That was beautiful. That was like a delightful little piece of nugget of deliciousness there. I was just trying to be really quiet because I was like, I'm gonna probably snip that out later and do some promotions with it because that was beautiful. Yeah, so I think it's really interesting too as we move. Businesses are really like, again, we're struggling with this kind of like, this is how it's always been done. But you're like, I think it could be done a different way. And I find it really interesting because I'll like, thankfully, I work with clients who are okay with being experimental. Let's just say that. Like, they're just like, let's see if we can break it and see what happens. Like, they're scientists at heart. No matter what their business are, they're like, let's see if we can break things to prove it doesn't work before we look to see like what does work. I'm like, I love that. But I would say that it's right now, especially as we're coming, I don't want to say off the pandemic because we're definitely still alive and well. Not necessarily alive and well. There's a lot of people who are not. But like, we're in this thriving pandemic is basically. And so we look at businesses who don't necessarily have this ability to take risks, but they still want to start moving in this direction of, how can I be in community? How can I change my business practices so that I'm not exploiting, but also I need to just create the profit margins that allow me to thrive and be able to pay my bills. How do you see us moving into the next direction and how businesses can start to maneuver that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think it's multifaceted. I think everything is multifaceted. If there's anything you need to
nuance for days.
Yes. Like nuance for days. Exactly. I live in the world of nuance. It's in my astrology. You can see it there. So I think it's multifaceted. And I would say if you're just starting out and cash flow is an issue, that is fair and valid. I will never, ever, ever force anybody into like 5-figure programs that they cannot afford, and that is not the thing. So coming back to that piece about manipulative sales, if you are in a place where your cash flow is tight or limited, if that is one of the constraints that you have, or if time is a constraint that you have, this is a map of your business. This is something that you know, and you can plan for knowns. Mm-hmm. So you know that you don't have cash flow, but maybe you have time. And so if you have time, then maybe you can partner with somebody who has the solution that you need, and you have the solution that they need, and you can swap in a gift economy kind of way. So
I love bartering.
Right? Bartering can be a really, really great way for new business owners to like level up, not to be all like that, but to level up, to build more capacity, to build more margin, the profit margin, so that they can start hiring out. And then from there, so you start in the gift economy, and then you move into group programs that tend to have like a lower rate so that you can still benefit. There's tons of free content out there that can be consumed by people who provide a lot of content and then have higher end offers in the background so that they can pay their mortgages. So there are lots of ways. We said at the beginning of the call where you said that you don't believe that people must have a coach. This is part of it. That do you need support? Probably. Yes. Do you need to like charge your credit card every single month in order to like barely afford your coach? Probably not. There's a lot of resources out there, and there's a lot of like membership communities. There's a lot of Facebook communities. There's lots of places where we can build our capacity, build each other's capacity in that rising tides kind of way, and without necessarily hiring out. And that way, that also breaks us out of the $2 an hour support that is very exploitative from the overseas help. So we can start when we have a little bit of extra cash, then we can hire somebody and know that we're paying them a living wage, and then they can hire people and pay their mortgage and put groceries on their table and so on. And in that way we build. So as opposed to expecting overnight success, micro progress until we're in a place where we can make better and better decisions.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting, I have a membership for something where people get confused, but there's 3 tiers. They all have the exact same benefits. They just have different prices.
Yeah.
And some people are like, well, shouldn't I get more for my money? I'm like, no, it's worth the highest tier, but not everybody can. So why should someone benefit just as they're at a lower income capacity than you currently are? And the fact that people are willing to pay at the top end allows me to create really great content for free, allows me to coach people for free, because I do that. And it's an opportunity for me to pay my mortgage, but also make sure that I can be accessible for different levels as well. And I think it's an interesting way for people to get over. It's like, if I pay more, I get more. And I'm like, have you been on the Tiffany website? Have you seen where they will literally charge $750 for a paper clip that you can't even put paper together? So, like when we think it was like less, like more as, cost more and all this kind of stuff, it's like, it really isn't. Price is fictional. It really depends on what market you want to market to, but also, are you taking care of your business? Are you taking care of your employees? Do we need to do advocacy in areas where, for example, if you have a brick and mortar business, if the cost of the commercial real estate makes it so that you're literally just trying to keep the doors open, how do we do advocacy around commercial real estate prices in an economy right now where we are across Canada? And I know US has got some of the same impact, and even around the world in Europe and Australia, is that like when you have an economy that needs to bounce back, how do we do market corrections that actually allows people to get into a commercial space that doesn't break them before they even get going?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good example of like looking at the whole picture. Like, where can we invest so that we know that we're going to get the returns that we want, so that our businesses stay in alignment with the way that we want to run them. That they don't have to, we will, because we are participating in the society, because there is not an opt-out option right now, or an unsubscribe.
Can I opt out of capitalism?
Like, we can't unsubscribe to capitalism just yet, but there are ways that we can make slightly better decisions. So we're looking at tweaks in creating a new, dare I say, society, like paradigm, right? That
way of being. Let's go very esoteric. Way of being.
And we can, and it's just like micro progress by micro progress, noticing that, hey, when we invest, so if we're speaking on a bigger economic level, when we invest in small businesses and brick and mortar restaurants and hospitality, then we know that people are going to eat out, and that's going to fuel the local economy. We know that when we invest in our employees, when they have a little bit of money in their pocket, that they do things like eat out, that they do things like buy houses and buy cars, and that is good for economy. So we can talk about that in terms of a basic livable income for universally across the country, which I know is an election topic right now as this is being recorded. So there are pieces there where we can invest in our people. And then so that this works like micro and macro as well, that there are pieces that we can invest in our businesses that we can see better returns on. And this isn't necessarily a spreadsheet of ROI, but really, if I put this plant together with this plant, then I know that they're going to help each other. And so I'm going to invest in these ways. I know that I do really well in these particular groups, and so I'm going to spend more time there. Or I know that I do really well if I'm posting on Pinterest once a week. Or I know that I do really well if I'm batching my content because I'm neurodivergent and I cannot bring myself to do them in a smaller, fragmented way. So there are ways that we can tweak and adjust so that we're moving toward businesses that we really love and we love being in, and our clients love, and it really fuels us and it becomes regenerative.
Yeah, and as you were talking, it just you did a little coaching for me and you didn't know, but I'll just share this. So one thing that doesn't work for me, and I know that it hasn't worked for me, is participating in these online conversation or debates around certain topics that I know Like, I'm not going to change my viewpoint. They're not going to change their viewpoint. So why am I spending time? It literally spins me out. It then spins out like my business partner. It spins out my husband because I'm like, can you believe someone said this? And it's like, why am I choosing this? Okay, I would rather go in and start talking about how we can create an economy that takes care of people. I want to have conversations where we start to actually challenge this kind of way that we do marketing and what would make it even better. I want to abolish pain point marketing completely because it's horrible, and it assigns people to be in pain before they can get help and support. You know, and I want to start creating the different conversations about what support looks like and how do we reward support and how do we, you know, how do we support each other but also be compensated. Anyways, there's all those kind of things, but it's like I'll choose the ones that make me angry. And so I love that you just coached me. I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna let that like percolate for a bit and think about that, and I'm gonna be like, what would Helen say right now if you're gonna go talk on this Facebook? You won't even know. Your ears will tingle and you'll be like, Marissa must be in a Facebook conversation about vaccines again, and you'll know, you'll get that little tweak. But it's like, it's an interesting reflection. You're right, we have to start choosing these spaces where we feel good. I don't want to say like, don't ever, things are going to make you uncomfortable in the world and you can't avoid them because we need to feel uncomfortable to create change, but work with people who do also want to create those kind of change, and you feel good about, even if they're contrasting your idea, it still feels good because you're deconstructing something to build it up even better.
Right. And there's discernment there too, right? That, I'm going to back up. Thank you. Thank you for that. And there's discernment there as well, that on the one hand, we do not want to find ourselves in a bubble of cheerleaders, because that is not beneficial for growth at all. So if you look around and everybody is just like, heck, you all the time, you need to build a bigger, better, stronger, more resilient community where people are going to push you outside of your comfort zone. And there is some necessity around the dialogue that, even though, you know, I or you will not change the opinion of that person in that Facebook thread, it is important to, I think, have those conversations in like as respectful ways as we can. Once it starts stepping away into like finger pointing, that's when I respectfully bow out and say, you know what, I'm going to wade in gently here. I'm going to say my piece, but I'm not here, you know, all day, every day for you. I'm not here to like, but I am here to, in case somebody else who's reading through this thread, who wasn't really sure how to say what they want to say, who wasn't really sure whether to speak up, knows that they're not alone. So I will speak up, but that's where the boundaries come into play, right? And then the last thing I want to say on what you just said, because this is so great, is about pain point marketing. That a lot of the time I teach my clients this. So pain, agitate, solution. This is the template for copywriting. How is your client feeling? How is it going to feel if they don't get the solution? Really poke the wound and then offer the solution, which is you, and you're great, and this is how much it costs, and much, much more if you do a payment plan, which I have thoughts about. But so instead with my clients, I say, talk about the pain, because people need to feel heard and understood. But instead of agitate, give them possibility. Pain, possibility, solution. So I understand where you are. I understand how that feels. Feels like garbage. That's true. That's valid. Imagine if it didn't feel like garbage. Imagine if we had these opportunities. You can do that. Here is one of the solutions.
Yeah.
It's me. Here's the payment plan, and it's not like triple. It's
right.
Just,
yeah. Or the price is the payment plan, but if you want to, I've given you like an opportunity off. But that's also a legal thing. Anyway, we can go into advertising standards in North America and different states but anyways, that's a whole other. You know, for me, the pain point marketing really came as I was I would say a baby coach. Everybody I worked with was like, I want to work with burnt out, exhausted, and it didn't matter what their industry was, whether they were a masseuse or like I don't know, massage therapist. I think I used the wrong word there. Is it massage therapist? Or a person who ran a shop. It was, I want to work with burnt out people who feel like they don't have anywhere else to go or something like that, right? And I was like, why? Okay, first of all, massage therapists only have about a 12-year lifespan of their career, because we only go to the massage therapist when we are sore and our muscles are locked. So that locked muscle impacts their body and they get wear and tear. If we went to massage therapists when we were all relaxed and limber and like went on a regular basis, it wouldn't have such a big impact on their body. Same for like therapists. We really only go to therapists when we're feeling really sad and depressed. And then that's hard on them because they literally listen to like sadness all day long, right? And so it's like, what if we went and we're like, I have this really great thing happening, I want to maintain it. Your therapist is going to be like, wow, this was a really cool session. And it's good. So that's that impact, right? And I said, so all we do is we create this like strategy, and there's more money in pain than maintenance, which I find interesting. Capitalism, right? We've built a whole, oh, I lost her. What happened? You're not in the stream. I can hear you.
Here we go. And I'm back. Am I back?
Your video isn't on.
All right, that's weird. My dog got up and aha, hello. So my dog got up out of her bed and somehow that magically made I don't know.
This is Wi-Fi in Canada, folks.
That's why, right? It's like
a bird flew across my Wi-Fi and totally took it out. Like I'm serious. Like he like took it out, and I was like, why can't my computer work? And then we realized anyways, we're in the wilderness up here. For anybody who doesn't know, dogs, cats, random birds will all affect our Wi-Fi.
It's good.
And I like, what was I saying? What was I saying about? I don't remember. Oh, pain point marketing. And I was just saying, like, we're really like, when we create these marketing messages, all we're doing is reinforcing that people can't get help and support until they're tired and burnt out. I'm like, wouldn't you want to work with people who are just living a really cool life, and then you get to help expand and enrich their life? And they're like, yes. I'm like, so let's start talking to them. And then people will be like, oh, I don't want to exclude the people who are burnt out. I'm like, they won't. They'll see that it's okay to be supported and nourished. Doesn't matter where they are, because you're creating the outcome. But that's a whole revolutionary change. I don't know if I'll ever see quite the end of it in my lifetime, but it always kind of irked me that, and again, I have a lifetime of public relations and marketing. This was things that were taught to me that we should do. Like you said, copywriting, that is the template for copywriting. It's like, find out what their pain point or their obstacle is. How can you fix it? Why is your thing the best? And it's like, just take a break. Like, let's just stop putting people in pain before they get help or support or live a great life. Like, we don't need to have that vulnerable moment before we achieve success. The hero's journey, we don't need it. We could just be heroes already. We don't have to go slay the dragon before we get to the horde.
Right? It's possibility marketing, right? Instead of pain marketing, it's
talk. So part of the challenge is I think you're actually in here twice. Because I unmuted you, but I think we can still hear you. Hold on one sec.
Weird.
Yeah, let's try this again. Talk.
Okay, I'm here. Can you not hear me still? I wonder if people can hear on Facebook. Can you see the comments?
I can't quite. But let me just see here.
Oh, it seems like I'm unmuted now. So that should be fine.
Okay, it might be just that I can hear double. We'll continue on. It sounds good. Keep going. Right. I can always edit it out afterwards, but yeah.
Okay, possibility marketing. That's what we were talking about, as opposed to pain marketing. That there's a real opportunity here in possibility marketing, talking about what is possible, talking about those the progresses, celebrating every single one, not just the six-figure launches and the massive amounts of revenue, but the fact that you showed up on Instagram Live because you said you were going to, right? Like that is a win, and that a client of yours sent a really nice email. That's a win too. And when we start looking at those pieces, when we start looking at what's working and celebrating that, then it fuels us, because you can't be fueled by frustration. You can't be fueled by pain. You want to be fueled by what is working, so you know where to double down. And so then the same goes when that's for internal marketing. The same goes for external marketing. When you can really lean into that. You can really talk about the imagine if, and then go off on a rant. Tell your people, imagine if, talk about those results, because the people who are in burnout and exhaustion and pain and overwhelm and challenge and all of those things will be like, oh, dang, I want that. And so it sells just the same.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the what if. One of my favorite questions too in my deck of cards is what would make this even better? And it basically is like, it happened. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't. Doesn't matter. Let's make all of it better. And I love that question just for my own personal, because it allows me to not be too hard on myself when I don't get it right, because there are times when I don't get it right. And there's times when I got it right, but it could even be better. And I love being have that celebration point. Okay, we've been talking for a while, and I think our internets are going to start to give us some. So I do want to ask, what is an obstacle in your business?
This is a really good question. And I think the one that I landed on that I think is relevant for our conversation is what happens when you change in your businesses and your referral engine runs out. So this happens a lot for entrepreneurs, and it happened for me, which is why I want to talk about it. That for me, I was a copywriter for a very long time. I switched to brand voice strategy, and then thought partnership and co-conspiratorism. And the people who knew me for a very long time would refer to me as a copywriter, but then didn't know how to refer to me otherwise. So I had to build a whole new marketing system. So this has been an obstacle for me going forward since my rebrand last year away from the communications distillery, which I was the communications distillery for 10 years. So making that shift, I know, right? In internet, I can see my wrinkles in in internet years, that is ancient.
Yeah.
And so I had been the communications distillery for 10 years, and I shifted to HelenTremethick.com and became the face of my brand, as opposed to having this agency style copywriting, brand voice strategy, coaching hybrid. And so that meant that I had to build a whole new marketing engine that wasn't just based on referrals, that was now based on showing up on Instagram, showing up on Facebook, really leaning into my Facebook group and so on. And so that has been a real, I'd say has been a personal obstacle of mine, because I am generally quite introverted. Reaching out in even online in a networking kind of way has always been a bit of a struggle for me. So relationship marketing has been my boon. I create relationships, and then we refer to each other, and that has always been a really, really great way. So the question for me has been how do you build a marketing system outside of relationship marketing, outside of referral marketing, that still is in integrity, still is in alignment, that still represents me and resonates with my people? How can I build something that I can stand behind? And it feels really coming back to brand new, even though I'm not, even though I'm ancient. It's been a whole new, beautiful experimental exploration. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm in a similar thing where I want to be more in community and creative and co-creation with people. And what I realized is that in a one-to-one format, it was exhausting myself. I was really putting a lot into my clients' businesses because I have an all-in business partner model, and it's great and it works well for me, but not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear from more people. I want to learn from more people. I want to hear different perspectives and experiences. So I'm in the same, I'm like, okay, I'm shifting what Create the Rules actually is away from actually me as the central person. So I'm opposite of you. I'm moving it more to be about a community of people who, and help multiple businesses flourish from any action that I do. And it's interesting because people have been used to, so I am autistic. I tend to talk about things in absolutes, not because I think they're necessarily all only true, but it's just a way I talk. And people who know me will be like, good point, but I challenge you. Like, they're like, aha, okay, she's put something out there. It's caused me to think, I don't think this is, here's different perspective. And we go at it, right? And it's lovely and it's beautiful and it's co-creative. People who don't know me, or don't know me that well, know that I talk like, here are things I believe in. And they might choose that they also, or that it makes them think, or that they're opposed to it. Taking myself out of that equation has been very interesting for my audience. I've had a lot of people push back and be like, what are you doing? Like, you should be like this thought leader. You should be this. And I'm like, nah. I'm like, nah. I'm kind of okay with just like putting stuff out there and like seeing how people run with it. Like, I want to be that kind of that catalyst, not necessarily the end solution or the outcome or even the action plan. And that's just because that's where I'm at in my life. And it's been interesting to see the reactions. Like I said, from long-term clients, well, how are you going to make money? I actually had a long-term mentor because I also have another business where we run events. Of course, it's been on hold for the last year and a half. We do bigger events. I have a mentor in that area. She's like, I don't even know how you're making money. I don't know how you can make money. I don't know how you make. I'm like, wait, just wait, right? Like, wait, I will show you. But like, it's been interesting to watch them be like, really push against me and be like, I don't know if this is what you want to do. Like, why are you talking about search engine optimization so much? I'm like, I love it. Like, it used to be my day job, 20 years ago, right? I'm like, I want to come back to, I want to be more less on social media, more on like organic searches and co-create. Anyways, I get it. It's an interesting thing. And the referral industry is how I built my coaching business. 100% was 100%. And I will say that. Not a great way to, again, layer your marketing.
Right? Layer your marketing. And also in this is that you are allowed to change. Your business is allowed to change. And if you are just strictly referrals, then it becomes very rigid because you are known for this particular service and they are going to send people for this particular service. But you are allowed to change. You are allowed to like break the rules and switch it up and say, I don't like that anymore, so I'm not going to do it. Why? Because I'm my own boss, and that is part of this agreement that I created with myself. I don't want to do it anymore, or whatever, right? And so, you as a human being are allowed to change, you're allowed to grow, and so why not your business as well? And so that's going to mean that you'll go through a pivot, you'll like open up other avenues and so on and so forth. And there will be people who are like, no, but I know you for this thing. You can't change it, but you can. Does that mean that it's going to be super easy? Not necessarily. Does it mean that it's going to be worthwhile? Probably.
Yeah. And that's why I asked this question, these obstacles in business, because I find it interesting. First of all, I find it interesting somebody who looks at something like this is an obstacle or a challenge or an opportunity. I mean, it's also an opportunity in your business too. Challenges and obstacles are opportunities, but it's like, this is something that's kind of, I'm pushing up against right now. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of say, oh, okay, well, if I have this exact same thing, if I'm building a business and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, Helen and Marissa 10 years, because mine's 9, so yours was 10. It's, I don't want to say that there might be a theme around that timeline of owning a business where all of a sudden you're like, I think I need something new, but there might be something in there. But like, look at this and it's like, how do I build a business that I can pivot from? How do I build a business that allows me to be more than just this one thing that I'm known for? And that's well, we probably should schedule another talk because I'm interested to hear your thoughts on niche marketing, which I just,
I have many.
so we'll have to do a follow-up talk about that. But you know, like this is the thing is where people get themselves into these areas, and then you know the ability to pivot could be not as big of an obstacle. Knowing, you know, like knowing what I know now, my next pivot, which will probably happen in about 5 to 10 years, warning everybody now, I've put things into place in this next stage that's going to allow me to actually pivot a lot easier.
Well, and it makes it more seamless, right? Which is, I mean, I've been teaching and coaching copywriting, content strategy, brand voice strategy, all of that for most of the time that I've been in business. I haven't sold myself as that, though, not until probably about 4 years ago. Or maybe 5 years ago, I fully launched coaching packages, but they were always alongside of copywriting. And so this, the idea is more of like a seamless pivot. So you start like laying Easter eggs or dropping breadcrumbs or whatever metaphor we want to put here that probably has something else to do with food, that, you know, that you want to make sure that that is staggered. It's like staggered into this new pivot.
Yeah.
And you can do that. And this comes back to what we were talking about right at the beginning. You can do that by owning all of you, by saying, you know, as a matter of fact, I think, yes, profit, and also smash the system. And so people aren't going to necessarily know you for only one or the other.
Yeah, I love that. And also smash. Okay, so what is an obstacle in your business? What's something that you're working on that you were excited about or that has been actually working really well for you?
So the motorcycle club, we talked about that. I love it. I love it. I love that it's like we get micro doses of time together. And so when we talk about progress, a lot of times we talk about leaps and bounds. Oh, I did this big launch. Oh, I did this big thing. And it's always a big. But the real magic is in the small. The real magic is in, you know, I'm not going to call myself a coach. I'm going to call myself a co-conspirator. Things change. And so you might be able to hear one of my cats in the background. He is feeling agitated. So he also agrees with me that small changes can be big, like slightly open this door and big things will happen. So that's something that I love about the motorcycle club is that that we talk about the small changes, we talk about the ongoing, and we do also talk about the bigger stuff, but we're not missing the smaller pieces, the human pieces, the community pieces, the pieces that make us whole. And that's what makes it super impactful. So I love that. I love that so much. It's one of the best things that I've done in my business in 10 years. But it just,
I love it. I love when that clicks. When
Yeah.
like I just, and it's like it's a shift, right? It's like I was working, you know, you were working one-to-one, you're looking at, you know, kind of individual, and then you're like, actually community and coming together and celebrating, like these are important things to me. So why don't I build a business around that model? And, you know, not only are your clients going to have a better time because you're enjoying what you're doing. Like you don't want to have to come be like, oh, I've got another call, or oh my God, like I just want to spend the afternoon outside. When you're like, no, I'm excited about this call, it comes across, and that's energy transference, like absolutely.
Oh, I love it. And I love them. I love that they're people who are showing up as wholly as themselves. They're bringing the stuff that is present for them right now. It's just, and I still do one-on-one coaching that's beautiful and impactful. It's like full on deep water swimming. Like we do magical things in that one-on-one time. And it's not for everybody. And so that's where the motorcycle club comes in, is that there's this beautiful, solid, incredible group that is making magic together.
Yeah. And the same thing, like because you're enjoying that time with the motorcycle group, you can go do your one-to-one coaching and be like, because I've got a business that supports me in all the different multifacets, because we are multifaceted. We have different ways of doing things, and we can change. Those are things that I've learned from you here now. Helen, thank you so much. I think, like I said, we'll have to schedule some follow-ups, because I bet you we can talk for years about the things that are going on in marketing and changes that are happening, and trends that people can be hopping on and using to their benefit. So I'd love to learn more about you. I'm so glad you came here today.
Me too.
A few tech issues and a cat that is maligned with a closed door, which I get. I'm surprised mine haven't been trying to wrench the door open to let me know that I made a mistake in closing a door. Tell us how to find you. How can the people find you?
Yeah, I am at HelenTremethick.com, Helen Tremethick on Instagram, Helen Tremethick pretty much everywhere. So you can find me there, and also in my Facebook group, which is Love and Badassery. And yeah, so there you go. If you're looking Love and Badassery, or you're looking Helen Tremethick, you'll find me.
I muted myself. I was just, technology. It's a Thursday, I think. It's one of those things. Tech Thursday is not my day. Thank you so much. If you're watching this live, thank you so much for spending time with us. If you're watching this on the replay, let us know. It's up on YouTube now. So if you missed the beginning, go and watch it. It's on the Create the Rules YouTube, but we'll also be re-releasing it. It'll be on a podcast as well. And it'll be on createtherules.com this weekend. So if you missed part of this, or you just need to listen to it again, because why wouldn't you? This was amazing. That's where you can find it, at createtherules.com. Thanks everybody. And I'm going to